Okay, I want to try a little thought experiment to kick things off today. I want you to picture a football stadium. It's Saturday, the stands are packed, the energy is, well, it's electric. You've got 22 players on the pitch, referees, coaches, thousands of fans just screaming. It feels like the most natural human gathering in the world, doesn't it? I mean, it's tribal, it's physical.
It does feel natural, sure. But if you really dig into the source material we're looking at today, which is a really fascinating cut through evolutionary biology and ancient history, that whole stadium scenario is actually, it's bizarre. Biologically speaking, it makes almost zero sense.
Okay, see, that's a bold claim, because I look at that and I see people running, kicking, shouting, and that all feels pretty primal to me. Why does the research say it's impossible?
Well, just look at the equipment that nature gave us. Evolution, it designed us for these small bands of hunter-gatherers. So we have legs for running. We have elbows that are, you could argue, great for fouling.
Right.
And mouths that seem perfectly designed for cursing at the referee. But here's the thing. We don't have a football gene.
Meaning there's no DNA strand that tells us what a corner kick is.
Exactly. Or, okay, consider this. You can take a puppy from a breeder in Ohio and a puppy from a shelter in Beijing, put them together in a park.
Never met.
Never met. They don't speak the same language. But within minutes, what are they doing? They'll probably be wrestling, play-biting, wagging their tails.
Because play is hardwired into them.
It is. The rules of rough and tumble are encoded in their genes. They just know not to bite too hard. They know that little bow that signals, hey, I'm playing. But humans, if you take 22 complete strangers and just put them on a field, they don't naturally start playing association football.
No.
Without a pre-existing agreement, that gathering probably turns into, I don't know, a chaotic brawl or just everyone standing around awkwardly.
So the only reason the game can even happen is because those 22 strangers all share an idea.
A completely imaginary idea. The offside rule doesn't exist in nature. The concept of a penalty box isn't a physical reality like a rock or, a tree. It's a shared fiction.
A story they all agree to believe in.
And because everyone believes that story, the rules, they can cooperate. This ability to cooperate with thousands of strangers based on shared imaginary rules is what makes humans unique. It's the secret sauce of civilization.
Okay, I follow you. So we use this imagined order to build tribes, then villages, then cities. But this is where the notes took a turn I really wasn't expecting. The argument is that this whole system, this shared story method, it has a hard limit.
A very hard limit.
It works for a football team, it works for a small village, but when you try to scale it up to, say, a kingdom or an empire, it hits a wall.
A biological wall, and that really is the whole mission of this deep dive. We're going to explore how humanity hit the absolute limit of the human brain's ability to process data, and how we had to invent something completely artificial to break through it.
We're talking about the invention of bureaucracy, which, I know that sounds incredibly dry. But the way this research frames it, it's actually a thriller. It's this story about rewiring the human mind, the invention of the world's first accountants, and, well, eventually, the rise of AI.
It's the story of how we went from memory to data. And to really understand why that shift was so traumatic, we have to start by looking at the bees.
The bees.
The bees. Social insects. Ants, bees, termites, they live in these massive societies with thousands, sometimes millions of individuals. They have complex hierarchies. Queens, workers, soldiers, cleaners.
Right.
But here's a question for you. Have researchers ever discovered a lawyer bee?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say no, although I would love to see the tiny briefcase.
Right. There are no lawyer bees. There are no accountant bees. A queen bee doesn't need a constitution to rule. She doesn't have to sign a contract with the worker bees promising them a certain amount of honey in exchange for their labor.
Because the whole contract is genetic.
It's biological. Their social structure is hard-coded right into their DNA. A worker bee doesn't just decide to go on strike. A cleaner bee doesn't try to stage a coup because she feels, undervalued. The entire system runs on autopilot because the program is already inside them.
But for humans, we just don't have that autopilot.
No, we have the exact opposite problem. Our social orders are incredibly fragile because they are imagined. Take King Hammurabi, ancient Babylon. He creates this massive, famous code of laws. If a superior man blinds the eye of a commoner, he pays a fine. If a son strikes his father, his hand shall be hewn off.
Brutal. Yeah, but very structured.
Very structured. But Hammurabi couldn't, eat some special root and pass those laws into his sperm. His sons weren't born just knowing the fine for blinding a commoner.
He had to teach them.
The laws had to be taught. They had to be memorized. They had to be sustained by constant education and enforcement. If that information stops flowing, even for a generation, the empire completely collapses.
So an empire is basically a giant information processing machine.
That's a fantastic way to put it. And for a very long time, the only hard drive available to process all that information was the human brain. And the human brain is, frankly, a terrible place to store an empire.
Why? I mean, we pride ourselves on our brains. We put a person on the moon with them.
We did, but not by using our brains alone. The sources we're looking at highlight 3 specific limitations that held humanity back for thousands and thousands of years. The first is just raw capacity.
The brain is full problem.
Exactly. I mean, think about the most brilliant person you know. Maybe they can memorize the entire script of The Godfather. Maybe a lawyer can memorize an entire constitution. But can they memorize every single tax payment made by every citizen in a city of 50,000 people for the last 10 years?
No chance.
It's just impossible. The sheer volume of data required to run a state exceeds the capacity of any single mind, or even a group of minds. But the second problem is actually even worse: mortality.
Right. Even if you somehow find that one genius who remembers all the taxes, he eventually dies.
And when he dies, the database is wiped, gone. You can try to pass it on orally. Okay, son, listen carefully. Here is who owes us wheat this season. But we've all played the telephone game. Information degrades every single time it's transferred from one brain to another.
It gets corrupted.
After 2 generations, your meticulous tax records are just a myth, a legend.
So you have capacity issues. You have the fact that the hard drive eventually just rots. But the third limit you mentioned, the one in the text, it feels like the big one. It's about adaptation.
This is the evolutionary kicker. Our brains were not designed for this kind of work. Evolution spent millions of years sculpting our minds for a very, very specific environment, the hunter-gatherer life.
We were built to survive in the wild, not in an office cubicle.
Correct. So what did a hunter-gatherer actually need to remember? They needed botany. This yellow wrinkled mushroom under the elm tree, delicious. That red one over there under the oak, that'll kill you in 5 minutes. That is vital, high-stakes information.
And social stuff too, right? Who's who in the group.
Hugely important. What we call gossip isn't just a bad habit. It's an ancient survival tool. You absolutely needed to know that Grok is fighting with Og, because if you go befriend Grok, Og might just hit you with a rock. Our brains are absolute supercomputers when it comes to social dynamics and biological classification.
I think I see where this is going. We're great at remembering that Jennifer is mad at Sarah, but we're absolutely terrible at remembering a long list of numbers.
Because a hunter-gatherer never needed numbers. You never needed to know there are 4,286 berries on this particular hill. You just needed to know there are enough. So we just didn't evolve a neural pathway for high-volume mathematical data processing.
And that works perfectly fine for millions of years. Until the agricultural revolution. Suddenly, we aren't wandering in the woods anymore. We're settling down, we're planting fields, and our populations are exploding.
And that is what creates the crisis, because when you have a kingdom, you have taxes, you have debts, you have property ownership. Jacob owns the field by the river. He paid 20 bushels of barley last year, but he still owes 5. But wait, he has a tax exemption because he's a veteran. Now multiply that by 10,000 people.
It's a complete tsunami of numbers.
And the human brain, which is beautifully designed to look for lions and mushrooms, it just short circuits. This is why, for thousands of years after farming started, human society stayed relatively small. They couldn't grow because they kept hitting this memory overload. They physically could not process the data needed to run a large state.
So the bottleneck wasn't that we couldn't grow enough food, it was that we couldn't remember who owned the food.
Precisely. We needed a hack. We needed some kind of workaround. We needed a way to process data outside of our biological bodies.
And say the Sumerians.
Enter Sumer, southern Mesopotamia, roughly 5,000 years ago, so present-day Iraq. And you have to imagine the environment. It's the scorching sun, massive muddy rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. It's hot, it's dusty, but the soil is unbelievably fertile.
So you get these big harvests.
Huge harvests, which means a big surplus of grain, which means trade, which means cities, which means temples. And suddenly, the priests and the kings in the city of Uruk are just drowning in data. They need to know who paid their tithes to the temple god.
And they can't possibly remember it all.
So some anonymous genius or probably a group of geniuses, invents a system. They realize that if you take a reed from the riverbank and press it into a wet piece of clay, you can make a mark. And if you all agree on what that specific mark means, the clay can remember the information for you.
Writing. But I want to clarify something here because the source material makes this really interesting distinction. When I think of the invention of writing, my mind immediately goes to poetry or history books or, at least a letter to a friend.
Right, you think of expressing language.
But the very first writing wasn't language, was it?
No, not even close. It was a spreadsheet. We actually have one of these early tablets. It's about 5,000 years old. It's not beautiful. It's just this lump of dried mud. And the inscription on it reads, 29,086 measures barley, 37 months Kushim.
29,086 measures barley, 37 months Kushim. It's a receipt.
It reads just like a modern ledger. Received 29,086 units of barley. Duration, 37 months. Signed, Kushim.
I just love this detail. We spend so much time in history class talking about the great prophets and conquerors, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar. But the very first name in recorded history, the first individual human being we can identify by name, isn't a king. It's an accountant.
It really grounds the whole human story, doesn't it? Kushim wasn't trying to express his soul. He wasn't trying to write a bestseller or a great epic. He was just trying to balance the books. And that tells us something absolutely crucial about the origin of writing. It was not invented to copy spoken language.
Explain what you mean by that.
Well, spoken language is what we'd call a full script. With English or Spanish or Mandarin, you can express anything. You can write a technical manual for a toaster, or you can write a sonnet about the heartbreak of unrequited love. You can capture nuance, irony, emotion.
But early Sumerian script.
It started as a partial script. It was extremely limited. It had symbols for objects, barley, a jar, an ox, and it had symbols for numbers. That's it. So you could write 5 oxen. You could not write, the oxen look sad today because they missed their mothers.
It was purely a mathematical tool.
It was a data processing tool designed to do the one thing the human brain couldn't do: preserve precise numbers accurately over a long period of time. It was this perfect marriage of biology and technology. The brain does the thinking, the clay does the remembering.
And speaking of the numbers, there's a note here about the specific math the Sumerians used. It wasn't the base 10 system that we all use today, was it?
No, well, it was a mix, actually. They used a combination of base 10, which is what we use, and base 6.
Base 6. That sounds incredibly inconvenient. Why on earth would you count in sixes?
It actually makes a lot of sense if you're a merchant or a tax collector. Think about the number 10. It's only divisible by 2 and 5. That's it. So if you have 10 coins and you want to split them evenly among 3 people, you have a problem. Or 4 people.
You get these messy fractions.
But the number 6, it's divisible by 2 and 3. And if you go up to 12, that's divisible by 2, 3, 4, and 6. And if you go up to 60, 60 is the magic number. It's divisible by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30.
So for trade, for dividing up grain or silver or whatever, base 6 and base 60 are actually far superior.
Much, much superior. And the legacy of that ancient Sumerian tax software is still with us today. It's the reason we have 24 hours in a day. It's why we have 60 minutes in an hour, 60 seconds in a minute. It's why a circle has the 360 degrees.
Wait, really? The reason I had to sit in geometry class and learn that a circle is 360 degrees is because of some accountant in ancient Iraq.
Absolutely. We are living inside Kushim's world. Every single time you check your watch, you are using a data processing system that was invented 5,000 years ago to keep track of barley shipments.
That is just wild.
Okay,
so Sumer solves this memory overload problem with clay tablets, a partial script, just numbers and nouns. But there's another example in the research that I found even more mind-bending. Because at least clay tablets look like writing. You make a mark, it means something.
Right, it's intuitive.
But the Incas,
Yeah.
they ran a massive empire without a single pen or piece of paper or tablet of clay. They used string.
The quipu. This is one of the most sophisticated examples of alternative data processing in all of human history. The Inca Empire was just vast. It covered what's now Peru, Ecuador, Bolivia, parts of Chile, 10 to 12 million people. They had complex roads, armies, taxes, census data, and they managed it all with colored wool.
Describe a quipu for someone who's never seen one. What does it look like?
Imagine a thick primary cord, sort of like a clothesline, and then hanging down from it are dozens, sometimes hundreds, of thinner pendant cords, and on those cords you have knots.
It kind of looks like a mop or maybe a really weird macrame wall hanging.
It does, but it's actually a tactile spreadsheet, and the level of complexity is just staggering. It wasn't as simple as tie one knot for one cow. It was a positional system, just like our numbers today.
Positional. What do you mean?
Well, think about the number 111. The one on the right means 1, but the one in the middle means 10, and the one on the left means 100, right?
Got it.
The quipu did that physically. A knot tied at the very bottom of the string might represent the ones column. A knot a little higher up represents the tens, higher still, the hundreds.
So you could literally read the number just by running your fingers up and down the string.
Yes. But then they added even more dimensions of data. Color. A red string might represent soldiers. A yellow string might represent gold. A white string could mean peace or silver.
So a red string with, say, 3 knots at the top and 5 knots at the bottom.
Might mean 305 soldiers. But it gets even crazier than that. The research suggests they even used the spin of the thread itself to encode data.
The spin.
When you twist wool, you can twist it clockwise or counterclockwise. In textile terms, we call that an S-ply or a Z-ply. And in the quipu code, an S-ply knot might mean asset or collected. A Z-ply knot might mean liability or owed.
That is unbelievable. It's basically a form of 3D binary code, but made out of wool.
It is. It's a complete physical database. And the Inca bureaucracy was incredibly efficient. They knew exactly how much corn was in the state warehouse in Cusco, how many pairs of sandals were made in Quito, all through these knotted strings.
But this story has a really tragic ending. Because today, we can read Sumerian cuneiform tablets. But we can't really read quipus anymore.
No, we can't. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived, Pizarro and his men, they were completely baffled. They saw the Incas running this massive, complex empire, but they didn't see any books. They didn't see any paper.
Just officials carrying around these big bundles of string.
Exactly. And at first, the Spanish actually tried to use the system. They kept the quipu masters, the quipu kamiaks, in their positions because the Spanish needed to know, okay, how much gold do you people actually have? How many workers can we exploit in this valley? And the only record was in the knots.
That's a very precarious position for a conqueror to be in. You're completely relying on the people you just conquered to read the financial records for you.
And you can't verify it.
Yeah.
If the quipu master looks at a knot and says, oh, sorry, this knot right here says we have absolutely no gold left in this province, what are you going to do? Check his math. You can't.
Paranoid conquerors do not like systems they can't control.
No. So the Spanish became convinced that the quipus were being used to hide assets or to send secret messages to coordinate rebellions, which, they probably were. So they demonized the quipu. The priests called it the devil's work. They ordered them burned by the thousands.
And forced the Incas to switch to European writing.
To Latin script and Arabic numerals. The quipu knowledge just died out within a few generations. We still have the artifacts in museums. We can see the knots, the colors, but we've lost the code book. We don't know the specific color coding or the ply meanings anymore. It's a massive database of an entire civilization's history that is permanently locked.
It really shows that data isn't just about the information itself. It's about the system you use to access it. And that leads perfectly into the next big problem that the notes discuss.
Yeah.
We've talked about how to store data on clay in knots. But storing is actually the easy part.
Right. Writing something down is trivial. The real nightmare begins when you try to get it back.
Retrieval.
Retrieval. Imagine you are in ancient Mesopotamia again. Writing has been around for a few centuries now. It's a huge hit. Everyone is writing down everything. Tax records, court cases, oracle predictions, land deeds.
So you have these massive archives.
You have rooms, entire buildings filled with clay tablets. But remember, there's no alphabet yet. You can't file things A through Z. There are no page numbers. There are no folders, no filing cabinets.
I want to paint a picture here, because the outline has this great example from the ancient city of Mori. Let's say I'm a farmer. My name is Jacob, and I'm in a bitter dispute with my neighbor, Esau, about a wheat field.
Okay, a classic dispute.
I know for a fact I bought that field from his father 30 years ago. I have a deed, but the deed is stored in the royal archive. So I go to the palace, I'm stressed out, I'm losing money every day, I can't farm this field. I walk into the archive building, and what do I see?
You see a warehouse floor covered in clay baskets. And inside those baskets are thousands and thousands of jagged pieces of dried mud. Some of them are broken, some are covered in dust. It's a mess.
And I go up to the clerk, who's probably sipping some herbal tea, and I say, excuse me, I need the deed for the river field from roughly 30 years ago.
And the clerk just looks at you with this look of absolute despair on his face, because to find that one specific tablet, he essentially has to read every single tablet in the entire room.
Unless they invented a system.
Unless they invented a system. This is where bureaucracy, with a capital B, really gets born. It's not enough to write. You have to catalog. The Sumerians and later the Egyptians and Chinese, they had to invent the concept of the reference. They started putting little tags on the baskets. Tablets concerning wheat, reign of King Zimmerlim, year 4.
They invented metadata.
They did. And they had to invent the dictionary and the calendar. All of these things we take for granted. Lists, catalogs, dictionaries. They aren't natural ways to tell a story. They are artificial tools designed to organize data so it can be retrieved efficiently.
But think about the experience of that clerk for a second. To make that system work, he has to think in a very specific, very unnatural way. And this is the part of the deep dive that really stuck with me. The argument is that bureaucracy didn't just organize our clay tablets, it fundamentally reorganized our brains.
It rewired us. Think about the education required to become a scribe. We actually have a text from about 4,000 years ago. It's essentially a student's diary from a scribe school in Sumer, and it is just grim.
I have the excerpt right here. It's a list of all the reasons he got beaten that day. The one in charge of the rules said, "Why did you get up without my permission?" And he caned me. The gatekeeper said, "Why are you going out without my permission?" And he caned me. The keeper of the beer jug said, "Why did you get some without my permission?" And he caned me.
And it goes on and on, right? He gets beaten for his handwriting, for his spoken Sumerian, for his posture. It's relentless.
That sounds like horrible abuse.
It is abuse. But from a historical perspective, it's also conditioning. Why do they need to break this poor kid down so brutally? Because the human mind does not naturally think like a bureaucrat.
So how does the human mind naturally think?
It thinks in associations, it flows, it's like a stream. If I say the word mortgage to you, what immediately pops into your head?
Oof. Monthly payments.
Oh.
My house. Maybe the fact that I really need to fix the gutter on the house. Which reminds me, I need to buy a ladder. Which reminds me of that time I fell off a ladder back in 1999.
Exactly. A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. You might end up thinking about a hospital visit, then a nurse you had a crush on, then the smell of her perfume, then the song that was playing on the radio. That is free association. It's how we tell stories. It's how we dream.
But you can't run an archive that way.
No. Imagine if you filed the mortgage document in a drawer labeled ladders or perfume from 1999. The entire system would collapse instantly. To be a bureaucrat, you have to sever those connections. You have to compartmentalize everything.
You need to think in drawers.
You need rigid, separate categories.
Yeah.
Mortgages go in this drawer. Marriage certificates go in that drawer over there. Tax receipts go in the third one. And even if the mortgage and the marriage are intimately connected in real life, maybe you bought the house because you got married, in the archive, they must be kept separate.
So the scribe school wasn't just teaching them how to read and write. It was teaching them to stop thinking like a human and start thinking like a filing cabinet.
That is the profound psychological shift.
Yeah.
We had to actively repress our natural, associative, holistic way of seeing the world in favor of this segmented, categorical view. We had to become compatible with our own data systems.
And once we made that switch,
Yeah.
once we accepted that the world is just data to be categorized, we started translating everything into code.
It was a very slippery slope. First, it was just taxes, then it was laws, then history. And eventually we reached for the ultimate partial script, the language that can describe anything but feels absolutely nothing.
Mathematics.
Specifically, the system we all use today, the 10 digits, 0 through 9.
Which we commonly call Arabic numerals.
Which is a complete misnomer, of course. They were invented by the Hindus in India. The Arabs encountered them, I think, during the conquest of India and immediately realized, wait a minute, this system is infinitely better than Roman numerals or anything else we see.
Well, what makes the 0-9 system so special?
It's the 0 and the positional value. With just those 10 symbols, you can represent any number from 1 to a trillion and beyond. It's incredibly efficient for complex calculation. So the Arabs refined it, and then Europe adopted it from the Arabs, and hence Arabic numerals.
And now this particular script has conquered the world more thoroughly than any empire in history.
It has. I mean, think about it. We translate almost all human knowledge, all human experience into these numbers now.
Give me an example of something we wouldn't normally think of as a number.
Well, take something like poverty. Poverty is a lived experience. It's hunger, it's stress, it's the feeling of cold. But in the script of bureaucracy, poverty becomes a number. It becomes the poverty line. If you make $12,880 a year, you are officially poor. If you make $12,881, you are not.
It turns a quality into a quantity.
Exactly. Or what about creditworthiness? That used to be a judgment of your character. Do you keep your promises? Are you reliable? But we turned it into a FICO score. 7 on 20 is good character. 580 is bad character.
And in some fields, like physics, we've actually gone past language entirely. You can't even describe it with words.
This is where the script becomes truly superhuman. If you look at something like quantum mechanics or general relativity, you can't actually explain what's happening using English or Sumerian or any spoken language.
You can't visualize it.
The human brain cannot visualize a four-dimensional curvature of space-time. It just breaks our intuition. But if you use the script, if you use the equations, you can understand it perfectly. You can predict it with incredible accuracy. The mathematical script allows us to think thoughts that our biology is literally incapable of thinking on its own.
We're basically surfing on the data.
We are, but there is a final step on this journey. We went from the holistic human brain to the clay tablet to the bureaucratic drawer to the modern number system, and now we are compressing all of it down to just two numbers.
0 and 1.
Binary, the language of computers. We are currently in the middle of this massive project of translating the entire human experience, all our books, our music, our photos, our biometric data, our voices, into endless strings of zeros and ones.
And this brings us right to the AI part of the conversation, because initially, writing was a servant. Kushim used the clay tablet to help him track his barley. The tablet didn't have its own agenda.
Right. The clay doesn't think, the quipu doesn't make decisions on its own.
Yeah.
But when you translate everything into binary and you feed it into a system that can process it 1 billion times faster than a human brain, something fundamental changes.
The servant starts to look a lot like the master.
That is the core anxiety of the AI revolution, isn't it? We created these systems to help us manage memory overload, to help us process the data of the empire. But the systems are now so complex, so vast, that we, the humans who built them, can no longer fully understand them.
It's like the quipu all over again.
Oh,
We don't have the code.
Exactly. With a deep learning AI system, even the programmers who designed it often don't know how the computer reached a specific conclusion. It's what they call a black box. The algorithm has developed its own logic that we can't follow.
So we've come completely full circle. We started as hunter-gatherers, totally confused by the scale of the world. So we invented writing to make it understandable. We built these massive bureaucratic structures to organize it. And now we've built a structure so complex that we are completely confused again.
And potentially, we are becoming the partial script in the machine's world. I mean, if the machine makes the final decisions about who gets a loan, who gets parole from prison, or where to launch a missile, and it does it based on data processing we can't follow, who is really running the empire anymore?
It's a chilling thought. We outsourced our memory to clay, then we outsourced it to paper, and now we've outsourced it to silicon. And the silicon might be waking up.
Or at the very least, it's operating on a level that we are biologically barred from ever accessing.
So let's wrap this up. We've traveled from the football stadium to the beehive, from Kushim, the accountant in ancient Sumer, to the Inca quipu masters in the Andes, and finally to the binary code that runs our lives. It's a massive history of one simple thing: the struggle to process information.
The struggle to overcome our own biological limitations. We refuse to be limited by our brains, so we built a second brain, an external one, outside of our bodies.
And that leads me to the question I really want to leave our listener with today. We've talked a lot about what we gain from this: civilization, science, the ability to organize billions of people. But I want to ask about the cost.
The cost of that mental rewiring.
Exactly. To use these systems effectively, we had to train ourselves to think in drawers, to think in categories, to think in numbers. We had to suppress that free associating, messy Wagner to Dragons way of thinking that is so natural to us. So my question is this: as we merge more and more with our data systems, what part of our humanity are we leaving behind? Are we flattening our own souls just to make them easier to file in a spreadsheet?
Are we shaping the data, or is the data now shaping us?
That's the one to chew on. Next time you're staring at an Excel row, just ask yourself, who's really in charge here? You or the grid? Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you in the next one.